Adolf Hitler was probably the bloodiest figure of the 20th century. His legacy of terror, totalitarianism and cruelty continues to cause both rejection and mystery, since the Nazi leader's configuration as head of the Third Reich was built through unlikely anecdotes, questionable exploits, and a number of assassination attempts by his detractors. Many men tried to bring peace to the world by ending the life of the Austrian, but those attempts were constantly thwarted. However, there was a man who had the opportunity to put an end to the life of this Machiavellian figure once and for all. Face to face, and with his rifle pointed at the Führer, this young English soldier decided to spare his life. This decision would weigh on him for years to come, for not taking the chance to end a slaughter of world proportions. Today in military history, we'll tell you about an event where mercy resulted in an unprecedented bloodbath for humanity. This is the story of the man who could have assassinated Hitler, but decided to let him go. Let's get started. And our story begins a year before the outbreak of World War II, in September 1938, when the English Prime Minister, Neville Chamberlain, met with the Nazi leader to discuss what would become the Munich Agreement. When the two men were talking at Hitler's retirement home in the Berghof, the Briton noticed a painting which he asked his host about. The work, carried out by the Italian artist Fortunino Madania, portrayed a group of English soldiers retreating from the battlefield at the intersection of Menin, a Belgian city, in 1914. In the foreground of the painting, a British army soldier could be seen carrying a wounded colleague on his back. Hitler explained to Chamberlain that he knew this man, had met him at the end of the First World War, and that the Englishman had spared his life in combat. The story goes that on September 28, 1918, after a long day, Hitler wandered wounded and tired near the town of Marcoing, a place located in northern France. During this moment of utter vulnerability, Hitler crossed paths with Private Henry Tandey, a member of the Duke of Wellington's 5th Regiment. The British took aim at the young Hitler and was about to pull the trigger. But the deplorable state of the Austrian aroused the mercy of Tandey, so he decided to let him go. The Führer himself declared, "That man came so close to killing me that I thought I would never see Germany again. Providence saved me from the fire of the English soldiers." Henry Tandey was born in Warwickshire on August 30, 1891, the son of a former soldier who abandoned him in an orphanage at the age of 6. By 1910, Henry joined the Green Howards Regiment of the British Army. During the next few years of his life, the Englishman served his country in Guernsey and South Africa, so he had vast experience by the time he was called up to fight in the First World War. His abilities saw him fight in some of the most intense battles of the conflict, such as Ypres, Somme, and Passchendaele. But some of his greatest exploits came in the year 1918, which earned him honorable awards. While serving in the Duke of Wellington's 3rd Battalion during the 100 Days Offensive, Henry Tandey, along with 2 other soldiers, performed the feat of taking a German trench, in which they captured 20 enemy soldiers. This action earned him the Distinguished Conduct Medal. Just 2 weeks later, the British would receive the military medal after rescuing several wounded comrades in the vicinity of Havrincourt. But his greatest achievement would be the Victoria Cross, the highest decoration ever received by a private, after destroying a German unit guarded by a machine gun and avoiding capture by the Germans, defending himself with only a bayonet. To this day, the awards given to the British highlight him as one of the greatest military heroes of his country. It is clear that Hitler, at the time, had no idea who was the man who had spared his life. But Tandey's military achievements led him to appear in numerous newspapers, one of which came into the hands of the Austrian, who was able to put a name and surname on the face of that merciful soldier. Years later, Hitler learned of the existence of the Madania painting through Dr. Otto Schwind, a member of his team whom he commissioned to obtain a copy that would reach the hands of the Führer in 1937. After telling Chamberlain how an Englishman spared his life, Hitler requested that he convey his warmest thanks to the Briton. According to some versions of the story, the Prime Minister took it upon himself to deliver this message by telephone as soon as he returned to the United Kingdom. But David Johnson, Tandey's biographer, argues that this version of events leaves too many questions unanswered. The historian claims that there was no way that Tandey and Hitler could have crossed paths, since on September 17 Hitler's unit had been moved some 80 kilometers north of where Tandey was. If the story was true, the meeting between the two men would have occurred on September 28, but official documents detail that Hitler had been on leave between the 25 and 27 of that month. In the historian's words, Hitler was leaving or returning at the time with his regiment 50 miles north of Markowing. He probably chose that date because he knew that Tandey had become one of the most decorated soldiers of the war. If you're going to tell of a British soldier saving your life, who better than a famous war hero who had won a Victoria Cross to build your reputation on? Furthermore, for Johnson, even if the dates coincided, it would have been unlikely that Tandey's image would have been recognizable in the painting owned by Hitler. Firstly, because the British soldier had been wounded during the conflict at Menin, he would have been extremely disheveled and covered in mud and blood, which is different from the image portrayed in the painting. To this is added the fact that the soldier did not have a telephone in his house during the period in which Chamberlain allegedly contacted him to give him the Führer's message. Obviously, the private was not able to confirm this encounter. When questioned in 1939, the Briton stated that he honestly had no recollection of the event. However, the following year and after witnessing the German bombing of the city of Coventry, Tandey said, "I don't know, if only I had known what he was going to do. Every time I see dead and injured women and children in Coventry, I ask God to forgive me for letting him live." Henry Tandey died on December 20, 1977 at the age of 86, with the question of whether he really could have prevented the worst atrocities in the history of mankind. We have reached the end of this video and we want to ask you, do you believe Hitler's account of Tandey's mercy, or was it just a strategy to exalt his own figure? Leave your answer in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to learn about many more military events that left their mark on history. Thank you very much for joining us until the end, and stay tuned for our next video.